Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, today I'm bringing you another video collaboration with Towen, one of the game ambassadors and members of the Eternal Nexus cluster. Towen has been a special guest on my channel in the past and helped me bring some really popular videos to you all where we do deep dives into some of the more technical aspects of the game. If you've been following my channel, you'll have noted our work together on the beginner series, as well as an older video that we did that reframed how you look at damage and pierce ratios, using Tiark as an example. Today's video in the newly named Masterclass series covers damage, but specifically how damage interacts with different modifiers in the game, and also different abilities in the game. That sounds technical, and it is, but damage is basically everything in this game, and it's important to have a good understanding of things in order to maximize your own output and success. Everything has been broken down with lots of visuals, and hopefully, simple explanations to follow along. As always, the video is time-stamped and chapter marked for you to skip ahead as needed. I've also included my referral code as an opportunity for you to earn 100 Blackstone at the end of the video. Before we get into the meat of the video, a quick congratulations to the 4 winners of the Morgan Ra giveaway. You've all claimed your shards, and congratulations once again. To those of you that missed out, don't worry, I do regular giveaways on my channel, and all you need to do is subscribe and keep up to date with the videos for a chance to win. To start with, let's begin by taking a look at the so-called damage ladder that is currently being used to calculate damage. Step 1 is to start with the unit's damage stat that is evidenced by the explosion sign, seen here on the character portrait screen. We then add or remove a 20% variance modifier that is randomly applied to this number. Step 3 asks us to check for a critical hit chance, and if successful, this step adds a fixed amount of damage. It's worth pointing out here that critical hit damage in Tacticus just adds a base damage or a fixed number rather than a percentage modifier, as can sometimes be the case in other games. Step 4 puts all of this together and gives us a damage calculation, taking into account things like the pierce ratio and armor type. Now, I won't go into a lot of depth for this step because I've covered the principles in the Tiark video previously uploaded to my channel. The last step on this ladder checks to see if the target has a successful block, and if so, reduces your incoming damage by some amount. Don't worry if that was all too quick for you, it's just to form the basis of what we're talking about, and we will revisit the damage ladder often through this video. Let's take another look at the ladder with a numerical example. We start off with a unit doing 1000 damage. We then apply the 20% variance and roll well on this check, so our damage is increased to 1200. Luck balances out for us on step 3, and we do not manage to successfully roll a critical hit. Our damage therefore is still 1200. For step 4, for the purposes of illustration, let's say we did an attack which does 100% piercing damage. This therefore will not get reduced at all regardless of target armor, so our damage total is still 1200. For the last step, our enemy did not successfully block, therefore our final damage output for this hit is 1200. Now that we have established some basic principles, let's look at the different ways that damage can be buffed or increased. We'll call the first example a damage bonus, where a bonus is added to the unit's damage stat. You'll see evidence of this on the character screen with a big green arrow next to the character profile, and the character's damage numbers will also be changed to green. The next type of bonus is a conditional damage bonus. This applies an increase to your attack damage rather than the underlying damage stat. This will make more sense later. There's no visual clue or prompt for this in the sense that there is no big green arrow or green damage text. However, you can identify these bonuses from their description, as they always require a condition to be met before being applied. The most obvious example of this is Eldryon. You get a very faint, brief purple glow on the affected enemy when Eldryon moves 2 hexes away. Other than that, the only way you know that you have affected the enemy is your mouse over damage increases significantly. The final damage buff is the modifier, or the global modifier as I like to call it. This is a percentage multiplier that is applied to all post-damage calculation and stacks multiplicatively. Let's put this together with another example, really trying to hammer home this concept of a damage ladder. You'll see the damage ladder here with the red text describing where each of these buffs act. Here in step 1, a 200 damage bonus is applied from a theoretical Calgar passive. Our starting damage is therefore 1200. In step 2, again, we roll well with variance and add a further 20% damage. This takes our total to 1440. In step 3, we apply the conditional Eldryon buff. Again, here we'll assign a theoretical value of 200, taking our running damage total to 1640. In step 4, we're still applying a 100% pierce value, so our damage is unchanged. The modifier's buff creates a step 4.5, where we apply a further 20% damage boost before we check for blocks. In this example, our entire damage total is increased to 1968. On this slide here, we have some examples of existing abilities in the game and where they act in terms of the damage ladder. Feel free to pause here if you want to have a look, but this list, particularly for conditional damage bonuses, is not exhaustive. If you've been following along, you know just how important the modifier's buff is. There are very few damage modifiers in the game. Elevation, Barbed Wire, Marker Light, and Roswitha's Active. Because this applies to the final damage total, this modifier buff has the potential to have the most significant overall damage increase. Now that we have looked at straightforward unit attacking in terms of the damage ladder, let's take a look at abilities. Abilities that deal damage come in 3 variants. Attacks that use the normal attack of the character, for example, Calandus's Active. Attacks that use their own damage stat, for example, Ulf's Active. And abilities that have their own damage stat but cannot be buffed, for example, Morven Vale's Active. Let's see how each of these 3 variants fits into our damage ladder. Abilities that use the unit's normal attack are straightforward. They follow the same rules and principles that we previously outlined. The example highlighted in green is unchanged from previously discussed. I'll leave this on the screen for a second for you to digest. There aren't many abilities in the game that attack using the unit's normal attack. In fact, as it stands, there are only the 5 listed here on screen. Abilities that have their own damage stat are more nuanced, as we saw with the Ulf example. These modify the damage ladder slightly and do not have the 20% variance modifier. Instead, they have their own damage range described in the ability descriptor. Because they don't use the unit's damage stat, we can see that they do not benefit from static damage bonuses, for example, Calgar's passive. These abilities, however, are still able to benefit from conditional damage modifiers like Eldryon and global damage modifiers like Roswitha. We can look through an example on the left in green to illustrate how this might play out in game. There are loads of examples of abilities in the game that fall into this category. It's safe to say, in fact, that most abilities in the game fall here. The last type of ability is the one that cannot be buffed. This is pretty straightforward, and you get what you see on the tin. A damage range reflected in the ability description, pierce or armor applied, and then a block chance. None of the previously described buffs or modifiers can change this value, nor can it crit. Listed here on screen are some examples of abilities in this game that fit into this category. You will see description text when an ability falls into this category. Now, that's a long video by my standards, so I've tried to condense everything here into a summary or takeaway slide. Basically, there are 3 types of damage buffs in the game, each acting on different parts of the damage equation, or the damage ladder as I've described today. Each of the abilities in the game, or at least the abilities that deal damage, also come in 3 different variants, adding further complexity to the damage calculation, and these abilities interact in different ways to the buffs described above. The main thing to note is that global modifiers are multiplicative and are potentially worth more than everything else. For example, High Ground and Marker Light adds a multiplicative 50 and 15% to your character's damage. Learning these different interactions is key to maximizing your damage and success. Here's the summary table that describes everything we've talked about and covered in today's video. That's all I've got for today. I hope you've enjoyed that video. If you're a newer viewer to the game, please consider entering my Refer a Friend code on screen to give yourself 100 Blackstone and support me in the work that I continue to do. It's a single-use thing, so choose wisely in terms of who you support. I want to thank Towen for the instrumental help he has given me on this video and previous ones. I've lost track of the amount of messages that we've exchanged over the months, and he has definitely been my muse in providing some of the more technical stuff on this channel. If you're interested in joining a new guild, feel free to join my cluster in Pants of Horus or Towen's in Eternal Nexus, both links in the video description below. Thanks folks, bye for now.
Do-do-dee. It's Nandi!